evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we? It's Friday today. I hope everyone's doing good and I hope that you've had a good week. Welcome to the MCJ Report number 34. We keep going and going and we will never stop. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the broadcast. I can see some of you tuned in. We seem to be back on YouTube, so we're enjoying it while it lasts. I don't really think it's going to last for a long time, but we may as well go for it, hey? I see Snufflenose, Bonnie, Chapman, Mel says, be sure to subscribe to Telegram. Thank you, Mel. That's correct. At Morgan C. Jonas. Lisa K. Joe Winter on YouTube. We have a couple of people tuned in on YouTube right now. Looks like we have a total of five viewers on YouTube and a bunch on Facebook. So it's great to see you all here. And there's Alan and everyone else. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the show on this Friday night at 6:34 p.m. right now. We've got some interesting things to talk about on the show, some updates. I'll explain a little bit more about what is the situation with Seymour and exactly what we're doing. It's starting to get a bit colder, so as you can see, I thought I would change the backgrounds to something that represents a little bit more of the cold. I know we're not quite there yet with snow and so forth, but nonetheless, you know that we like to keep it fresh and new on the MCJ Report. So if you've just tuned in, welcome. Go ahead and share the broadcast. We'll get the word out there. Again, we're going to go through our You Can Say No segment, which is really becoming a permanent fixture because it seems that really what we're seeing is that so many people have forgotten that they can say no and they feel compelled, pushed, pressured into taking a drug that they didn't ask for and that they don't want. We see that the vaccine has indeed become mandatory for certain jobs in certain areas. Okay, so yeah, so much for Scott Morrison when he said it wouldn't be compulsory and we won't hold you down and make you take it. What we know now is that Scott Morrison was indeed espousing misleading statements because we see true coercion taking place on a daily basis. And if it's not from the workplace, it's from corporations and the talk of vaccine passports. We're going to talk on the show also about a microchip implant which is being developed in the US, which supposedly tells people whether or not they have COVID. So we're going to get to all of that, plus a little bit more. And I see some comments there. Ang, I agree with you. Hey, Karen. Darren says, how about no way? I agree with you. All right, so let's get started. Let's just go through it. All right, so mcjreport.com/support. This is my full-time work and it is only made possible because of your support. So if you'd like to financially contribute to the show and everything else that goes along with it, everything that goes on behind the scenes, of course, the events and all that we do, you can go to mcjreport.com/support. And of course, if you're going through a difficult time, I would prefer that you held off for another day. Telegram, I'm going to keep on drilling this because I truly believe Telegram is the most important platform of our time. That's right. It's not Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. It's Telegram. What I love about Telegram is that it's censorship free and it's doing way more to uphold free speech than the American tech companies. And Telegram is owned by Russians. That's right. So head over to Telegram and make sure that you give me a follow, Morgan C. Jonas, and that way we can always stay in touch. Okay, we'll always stay in touch. Better yet, actually, you can go to mcjreport.com as well as Telegram and put your email address in on the homepage, and that way I can send you emails and we can communicate and exchange information without fear of being shut down via Facebook. All right, so I just need to talk about this, and that is that we are going to Seymour tomorrow. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We've had a little bit of a runaround. We were supposed to have a pub night, but unfortunately it appears that something happened and the pub got a little bit freaked out and did not want us attending. So it seems that we're not welcome at the particular pub that we were intending on visiting. My suspicion is that perhaps somebody called the pub in order to sabotage our event, which unfortunately is something that has happened before with the market. Now, there's no point getting too upset about things. I'm not sure what happened during that phone conversation, but nonetheless, we always have a plan B. So the plan B is as follows. I will be at Seymour train station tomorrow. That's right. I'll be on either platform 2 or platform 3. You'll see me. I'll be standing there. You can't miss me. I'll be there at 1:45 onwards. So 1:45, say to maybe 2:15. So make sure that if you want to participate in the festivities in Seymour, come and meet me at the train station. We'll get a little group of us and we will go to a location which will be disclosed upon meeting me. Because unfortunately, if I was to choose a location now and announce it, there's someone out there or a group of people who'll be watching this video that will call that place in order to try and scare the business owners out of having somebody like me and Monica show up with a group of maybe 20 or 30 people. Now, really, these people are only hurting these businesses. Now, you tell me, if you're a business owner and you know that there's a couple of people that want to bring 30 people to your business to buy food, to buy drinks, to spend money, is that something you would want, or is that something that you wouldn't want? Obviously, it's a good thing, and we want to support businesses, and we will work something out tomorrow. I don't know exactly what we're going to do, but once again, I'll be at Seymour train station on the platform between 1:45 and 2:15. So show up during that time. We'll get a little group of us together and we will figure something out. That's right. And we'll have a catch up. We'll talk about how you can get involved in your community, how you can get involved with Reignite Democracy. We have so many interesting projects that we're working on right now. A lot of projects that are showing a tremendous amount of promise and ways that we can all play a role in taking our country back. So I hope that I see you there. It's not a huge drive from Melbourne. We have some people from Bendigo coming down and surrounding areas. So that's what we will be doing. There's Melinda saying it's not the first time. That's right, Melinda. And you know what? It won't be the last time. But the truth is, they can't stop us. Our momentum is too big, and our heart is in the right place. And that's what you need in this world. Okay. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. All right, now this may become a new segment on the show. That's right, Operation Cycle Threshold. On the last episode of the MCJ Report during the Q&A time, somebody asked me about the cycle thresholds being used state to state. And although I have a rough idea, I didn't know the exact answer. So I figured this calls for launching Operation Cycle Threshold. So what I'm doing is putting a small team together of people that are seeking to investigate what the cycle threshold is of the PCR tests being used from state to state through the pathology labs and by reaching out to the related departments and so forth. It is somewhat of an operation because there are many departments involved and several pathology providers involved. So if you would like to join Operation Cycle Threshold, I've created a special Telegram group. So send me a message on Facebook and we'll have a little bit of a talk, and you can be involved in this operation of uncovering the true cycles of which the pathology providers are running the PCR tests. Why is this important? Well, it's been determined quite distinctively by many of the world's leading virologists and field experts that the higher the cycle threshold on a PCR test, the higher likelihood the test will pick up something it considers to be SARS-CoV-2 or something it considers to be consistent with SARS-CoV-2. Many concerns have been raised about the overly sensitive nature of these PCR tests in relation to perhaps picking up other viruses. Hey, as admitted by the CDC in their own document, if you want a copy of it, go and follow me on Telegram. I posted it up there. But the general concern is that when the cycle threshold is so high and the amplification process is so big, the test could be picking up things like perhaps dead viral cells or other types of viruses and bacteria. These are not my words. These are words that have been expressed time and time again, and that a positive PCR test result may not necessarily indicate infection or that a given individual poses some type of risk to society or that somebody has anything. That has been the major criticism of the PCR test. It was even admitted by BGI Group that these tests are super sensitive. This came after Sweden reported thousands of false positives, and I wonder how many false positives around the world have never been reported. That's a question I don't have the answer to, but I can only suspect it would be quite significant. We have other experts on record declaring that many PCR results result in false positives. I'm going to show you a little example of what I mean by that, and I'm going to pull up an article followed by a segment from a Canadian Member of Parliament, Randy Hillier, when he first addressed this issue in one of the Canadian parliaments. All right, so before I show you this article, I have a document here from the South Australian government that was sent in to me by a reporter. So I'm going to show you this document right now. All right, I'm going to move it in front of me. All right, so what you're looking at, ladies and gentlemen, is a document from the Government of South Australia. Now, I've blacked out the name of my supporter in order to protect his identity and to respect his privacy. Now, this is from Stephen Wade, member of the Legislative Council, Minister for Health and Wellbeing. I'm going to read this letter to you. It says, thank you for your emails dated 31st of December 2020 and 17th of January 2021 regarding the polymerase chain reaction, PCR, COVID-19 test. South Australia Pathology is a diagnostic laboratory accredited by the National Association of Testing Authorities and is the designated public health laboratory for South Australia. The SARS-CoV-2 testing has been conducted with the provisions of the Therapeutic Goods Administration. I am advised that South Australia Pathology use up to 45 cycles in their PCR testing and adhere to strict NATA testing accreditation requirements. South Australia Pathology has used in-house and commercial nucleic acid amplification tests to detect SARS-CoV-2, the causative agent of COVID-19 infection. NAATS are the accredited gold standard test for detecting SARS-CoV-2 RNA. South Australia Pathology's in-house and commercial NAATS have received excellent level of detection evaluations and passed quality assurance thresholds determined by the Royal College of Pathologists of Australasia Quality Assurance Programs. Thank you for writing to me about this matter. Yours sincerely, Stephen Wade, Minister for Health and Wellbeing, dated 6th of February 2021. All right, so what we have here from the South Australian government, the key point to take away is the cycle thresholds. SA Pathology use up to 45 cycles in their PCR testing and adhere to accreditation requirements. Now, what we see from several virologists around the world has been doubt regarding the effectiveness of these PCR tests in relation to the high cycle thresholds. We've seen many experts raise concerns, especially when the cycle thresholds reach the late 30s and early 40s. I'm going to show you a little bit about why I'm saying that here. Okay, so I've got an article here. This is an article from the New York Times. Your coronavirus test is positive, maybe it shouldn't be. So I'm going to read to you here. It says here, the standard tests are as in the PCR tests, are diagnosing huge numbers of people who may be carrying relatively insignificant amounts of the virus. It goes on to say most of these people are not likely to be contagious. And again, I will send you the full article, mcjreport.com, put your email address. It says here, the most widely used diagnostic test for the new coronavirus is called a PCR test. It provides a simple yes-no answer to the question of whether a patient is infected. It goes on to say, in 3 sets of testing data that includes cycle thresholds compiled by officials in Massachusetts, New York, and Nevada, up to 90% of the people testing positive carried barely any virus, a review by the Times found. Now, it goes on to address the problem in these positives that result from the high cycle thresholds. It says here, one solution will be to adjust the cycle threshold used now to decide that a patient is infected. Most tests set the limit at 40, a few at 37, And as we saw from that statement before from the health minister in South Australia, up to 45, even higher than this article. This means that you are positive for the coronavirus if the test process required up to 40 cycles or 37 to detect the virus. Tests with thresholds so high may detect not just live virus, but also genetic fragments, leftovers from infection that pose no particular risk, akin to finding a hair in a room long after a person has left. And that's from a doctor by the name of Dr. Michael Mina, an epidemiologist from the United States. Juliet Morrison, a virologist at the University of California, Riverside, said any test with a cycle threshold above 35 is too sensitive, and that she's, quote, shocked that people would think that 40 could represent a positive. And these types of concerns and sentiments have been echoed by field professionals all over the world. I'm going to play to you now a clip from a Canadian Member of Parliament, Randy Hillier, who, to his credit, brought this argument up in one of the Canadian parliaments. Check this out.
Next question, the member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
My question is to the Premier. Our COVID policies and the risk that they pose requires an honest and forthright discussion. Dr. Yeadon, a former chief scientist with the pharmaceutical giant Pfizer, has stated, and I quote, most, if not all, of the PCR tests result in false positives due to high CT thresholds. Juliet Morrison, a virologist at the University of California, states, and I quote, any test with a cycle threshold above 35 is too sensitive. The Public Health Agency of Canada reported in May of this year that testing over 25 cycles provides dubious results. The prestigious Oxford professor Dr. Carl Hennigan has stated a PCR test does not equal COVID-19. Speaker, my question to the Premier is your testing creating both a false understanding of the risk as well as false positives? Back to the Premier, and I'm glad that question was posed. On July 30th, the Deputy Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Barbara Yaffe, stated, and I quote, our testing can result in over 50% false positives. That is, the person actually doesn't have COVID. They have something else, or they may have nothing. She has also called for limits on testing of asymptomatic people, while the government calls for more. Another contradiction in a long list of COVID contradictions. We know high false positive rates are due to high CTs, and Canadian and world experts agree it should not be more than 25 cycles. Yet, according to the Journal of Virology, Ontario labs are testing samples at 38 to 45 cycles. That's what needs to be done. Speaker, to the Premier, when did the Premier become aware of these faulty tests and practices, and why have you done nothing to fix them since at least July?
I would say to the member, there are zero inconsistencies coming from our public health experts.
25.
Dr. Yaffe has clarified what she indicated before. What she indicated before was that the
25.
PCR testing is very effective in areas where we are having outbreaks, such as what we're seeing in various parts of the province right now, in Peel, in Ottawa, and in Toronto. We need that testing to make those decisions. We are taking action where we need to take action. We're looking at other methods of testing as well. Some of the antigen testing is looking very promising. It looks as if Health Canada is going to be approving that. It's a good screening tool, but we need every tool that we can use at our discretion. PCR testing, antigen testing. We're looking at saliva testing.
All right, so Randy Hillier from Canada doing a great job. That was from last year, bringing the issue of the high cycle threshold and the proclivity of these tests to produce false positives to the Canadian Parliament. Randy's been very outspoken, actually, and has really been doing a good job to stand shoulder to shoulder with the people over in Canada during these very crazy times. Now, this is just the beginning of this segment. I'm going to expand on Operation Cycle Threshold, so you will be seeing a lot more of this. And we are not going to let this go, because despite the fact that the World Health Organization has expressed, I suppose, concerns in relation to how various nations are interpreting test results, and despite the fact that the CDC even admitted that these tests can't rule out finding other types of viruses. And despite the fact these tests were unable to be used and proven beyond reasonable doubt to detect infection in a European court, our Australian politicians still insist on coercion and using coercive methods to get the public to get tested, right? Referring to these tests as the supposed gold standard, despite all of their shortcomings. That's right. So this is a pretty interesting segment. We're not going to let this go, just like we're not going to let the notion of mandatory vaccines goes. And if you would like to be a part of this operation, send me a message on Facebook. I'll send you a link to the Telegram group. First, we'll have a little bit of a talk, okay? Because sometimes people want to be involved in groups who don't have the best intentions. That's something else that seems to happen. When you broadcast and you put yourself on the internet, some people come to you as a friend, as an ally, but sometimes they have nefarious intentions. So I hope you don't take it personally, but I will ask you a few questions if you get in touch with me and you'd like to be involved in this operation. All right. Anyway. I just wanted to express my support for Serene. As you may have seen, her license to practice law has been revoked. Now, Serene will be challenging this decision, and I think it's terrible. Her license has been revoked shortly after she submitted the class action complaint representing over 3,000 people due to the Flemington Towers that were locked down. She's been an outspoken person since the start of this corona situation, representing and giving hope to a lot of people and doing a tremendous job. I know Serene, I think she's great, and I don't believe she deserves this one bit whatsoever. Now, we've read the news articles, and not a single reason has been given as to why her license has been pulled. Not a single reason. Is it because she's challenging the government? Is it because she is challenging the merits of this so-called state of emergency or the Public Health and Wellbeing Act and bringing elements of the Biosecurity Act into the equation? Is she simply too much of a threat and now her license has been revoked by, perhaps unfortunately, powers that are a little bit bigger and stronger than many of us? But she's not giving up and she will be appealing this. Now, I want to do everything I can to support Serene in this battle, and I'm open to all sorts of ideas. We could rally for Serene. We could engage in some other type of action for Serene. I like her very much. I think she's a great person. If you have any ideas or you'd like to be involved, then again, put your thoughts in the comments. I read the comments, or send me a message. But I would really like to do something publicly and something with an objective to try and help and support Serene. We can't allow the powers to be to strike down people who are putting it on the line to make a difference. You know, we see so many lawyers that have their mouths shut, so many doctors with their mouths shut, so many police not speaking out. So when somebody, a field expert, speaks out and uses their expertise to represent the people in a difficult time, they are putting their health and safety and career on the line. So we should do what we can to also support people who make those sacrifices for us. I don't know what we're going to do yet, but I'm putting it out there, and I hope that we can come together on this. I'm going to read to you a little bit the article that was published regarding Serene in The Age. This was just from yesterday. Watchdog cancels license of lawyer leading lockdown tower lawsuit. So supposedly it was the Watchdog. Watchdog decided to cancel the license. Says here, a lawyer who filed a class action lawsuit over the mandatory coronavirus lockdown of 9 public housing towers in Melbourne has had her license cancelled by the state's Legal Services Board. All right, someone said who cancelled it? The state's Legal Services Board. What sort of process did they go through? It seems quite arbitrary to me. The board confirmed it had cancelled the license of solicitor Serene Tefaha, saying the Melbourne lawyer no longer has a practicing certificate and cannot engage in legal practice. There's Serene right there. Says here, Ms. Tafaha has vowed to fight the decision, and I believe we should support Serene in fighting this decision. Hall and Wilcox partner Jacob Uljuns has been appointed by the board to manage the litigation and has taken over the operational responsibilities for Ms. Tafaha's Preston law firm Advocate Me, the board said. The notice was sent at about the same time that Ms. Tafaha filed the class action on behalf of thousands of public housing tenants subjected to the hard lockdown that confined them to their homes in 2020. The board has not said what led to the cancellations. So they haven't said why they cancelled Serene's license, just that they have. They've made a decision to do it. Oh, the public doesn't need to know. Is it not in the public's best interest to know? Why are they keeping it so quiet? When there's no transparency, it leaves us to make our own assumptions. What we see in Serene is we see somebody that is challenging the overarching policy of the government, policy that you and I would argue has violated the rights of many people, millions of people, I would say. Serene leading the charge in many ways, and now just the board has not said what led to the cancellation of her license. They just shut the license down, shut down the legal license. Says here, the lawyer had been seeking clients for a range of class actions that covered people affected by various COVID-19 measures, including any form of detention, mandatory vaccination, business closure, isolation in residential aged care, cross-border rules, and contact tracing. Yeah, so it's pretty bad news. Serene's previous activism included advocating for survivors of sexual abuse and family violence, government transparency, and whistleblowers. All very important causes. On Thursday, Mr. Tafaha labelled the board's decision as unlawful and said her clients do not accept any government regulator intervention. Mr. Tafaha said the decision disregarded the whistleblower complaints placed against the board by herself and her clients, and she's vowed to fight the decision. And we should fight with her. Yeah, so it just goes on to explain a little bit about the class action, what it is, and a little bit of Serene's history. Mr. Tafaha accused the judges of perverting the course of justice. All right. So really sad news and a big blow to the cause of freedom, ladies and gentlemen. Put your thoughts in the comments below, and we wish Serene all the best during this very difficult time. This is something interesting that was sent in by a supporter to me. I believe this is from the MyGov account when people log in to access various details about government services. If you look here, we see it says your immunisation history statement. Continue to Medicare to get your immunisation history statement. So what we see appears to be functionality to upload details in regards to vaccines that one has or has not had. So could we possibly be witnessing the beginning of a situation like no coronavirus jab, no Centrelink, no coronavirus jab, no public housing or something to that effect? We've seen people in the media, I believe his name was Steve Riley, speak about, well, maybe there should be no jab, no JobKeeper. Easy for him to say on his wicket. Is this the beginning? Is the government setting up the infrastructure to cater to a system whereby those who do not choose to have the corona injection could be restricted from accessing these types of public services? Maybe you've got your own thoughts. Put that in the comments below. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, you can say no. That's right. So this is a God-given right. We're going to talk a little bit about some vaccine injuries and some other related information regarding the COVID-19 quote vaccine. So let's just get straight to that, shall we? Sadly, some of you may have seen this. New South Wales woman, 48 years old, dies only days after receiving coronavirus vaccination. Says here the 48 from the New South Wales Central Coast was hospitalised and died on Wednesday after being given the vaccine last Friday. There were unconfirmed reports she suffered from blood clots after receiving the jab. She is also believed to have been a diabetic. The Federal Department of Health released a statement on Thursday evening saying the TGA and New South Wales health authorities were investigating the woman's death, but no direct causal link had been established yet between receiving AstraZeneca and the subsequent death. Okay, so we always see that, no link, we can't prove that it was the vaccine or anything to do with the vaccine. Yet when someone dies and is reported to have died from COVID-19, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, it's okay to assume that that person died of COVID-19. So the government's allowed to engage in assumption when attributing death to COVID-19. But when it comes to a death which could have been caused by a vaccine, they have to launch a full-fledged investigation. They need to investigate and do everything in their power to determine the exact cause of death, because they wouldn't want to wrongly attribute a death being the result of somebody taking a vaccine. But COVID, they can assume. We saw the document from the Western Australian Coroner's Court that it's okay to assume somebody died from COVID, even if they did not have a COVID test, even though we know the PCR tests are highly flawed. If somebody happened to die with certain symptoms that are associated with coronavirus, that is grounds to assume that person died from COVID, according to a document from the Western Australia's Coroner's Court. Again, mcjreport.com, I'll send it out to you. I also put it on my Telegram at Morgan C. Jonas. So a very tragic loss, of course, only 48 years old, shortly after taking the AstraZeneca vaccine. And of course, the Department of Health, very quick to raise doubts about whether this was a result of taking the AstraZeneca vaccine, because the agenda of the government is to, of course, get as many people vaccinated as humanly possible. Moving on here to the Fair Work Ombudsman, COVID-19 vaccination in the workplace. Says here, in the current circumstances, the overwhelming majority of employers should assume that they can't require their employees to be vaccinated against coronavirus. Sounds pretty good, but is it really? I don't think so. It goes on to say, the Australian government's policy is that receiving a vaccination is voluntary, although it aims to have as many Australians vaccinated as possible. However, there are limited circumstances where an employer may require their employees to be vaccinated. Limited circumstances, we're seeing many of them. People in the police, quarantine workers, nurses, other frontline people, and I can only imagine that's going to expand. Goes on to say, current state and territory public health orders requiring employees to be vaccinated. In late March 2021, the Queensland government issued a public health direction mandating coronavirus vaccination for some workers. The direction was issued on 31st of March 2021 and affects healthcare service employees, Queensland ambulance service employees, hospital and health service contractors. All right, so mandatory vaccines for those people. And I believe we are only witnessing the tip of the iceberg in regards to groups of people whereby the government does everything in its power to have those people injected. It says here, at this stage, no other Australian state or territory has issued public health orders enabling employers to require their employees to be vaccinated. At this stage, so they're sure as hell leaving the door open at this stage. It says here, this may change. May change, I'd say you could bet on it changing. We will update our information if new public health orders are issued. All right, so it's like the Fair Work Ombudsman kind of gives you a bit of false hope. Hey, at this stage, it's only these workers, but that might change. All right, moving on. Moving on to Greg Hunt, or as Scott Morrison prefers to refer to him as.
On the 19th of February, Minister Hunt called the EU Health Minister.
Yeah, we're not going to forget that, are we? This is from SBS News. Doctors, quote, flocking to vaccine program as Greg Hunt says they face no legal risk for giving AstraZeneca jab. Well, I suppose the vaccine companies are not liable if somebody suffers some type of injury or personal damage as a result of taking this drug. The doctors are not liable, so no one's liable. It's a free-for-all. Flocking to the vaccine program. Now, why would they not flock to the vaccine program? They have every reason to flock to this program, these doctors, and that is because they will be paid, quote, 3 times as much per vaccine administered as they were for more common jabs such as the flu inoculation. And that's coming from Greg Hunt himself. Talk about a financial incentive to these doctors, GPs, general practitioners. Hey, you inject these patients of yours with AstraZeneca, Pfizer, you'll be paid 3 times as much per vaccine as opposed to other more commonly administered vaccines. So doctors receiving financial incentives, government using coercion. This man here is massive trouble. He must be voted out next election. I tell you that this man must go. He has no background in health. Okay, he has betrayed his duty of care to the Australian people. He has used the Therapeutic Goods Administration as his little tool, his little frontman tool, posing as some type of responsible body for assessing the safety of various drugs and tests. We see these provisional approvals. There were never any real checks and balances over the PCR tests and where they came from, whether or not the Chinese Communist Party was involved in BGI and engaging in biometric surveillance of its citizens. There were never any real checks and balances with these vaccines. We know that the average length of time from development to rollout of a vaccine is over 10 years. Yet without understanding anything about these vaccines, Greg Hunt told us that they're safe, effective, and that if we take these vaccines, they're gonna save our grandparents. He really said that, and he said we're the clinical trial. I'm going to play that right now.
The world is engaged in the largest clinical trial, the largest global vaccination trial ever, and we will have enormous amounts of data. But what's the message for the public? It's safe, it's effective, it will help protect you, but it will also help protect your mum and dad, your grandparents, your nonna, all of Australia.
Yeah, so that's Greg Hunt for you. Greg Hunt really just towing the line, doing everything he can to protect his career at your expense. All right, moving forward here. Here we go. Who here is surprised by this? Pfizer CEO says third COVID vaccine dose likely needed within 12 months. I tell you who's licking their chops right now at this prospect. The Pfizer shareholders. The billionaires that control Pfizer that are set to profit like they've never profited before off the global rollout of this particular Pfizer product. Pfizer has an undeniable long history of negligence and criminal behavior in regards to how they have sold their products and in many cases not informing former consumers of their products of various risks. I did an entire report on Pfizer's corporate rap sheet. You can go to mcjreport.com, click on special reports, and there it is right there, violated by Pfizer. I felt that it was important to talk about Pfizer's corporate rap sheet in order for would-be Pfizer vaccine consumers to understand the true nature of this company they're dealing with. You see, I firmly believe that the greatest indicator of future behavior is past behavior. If you want to estimate or make an educated decision as to how a corporation may act, look at what they've done in the past. Okay, so this presentation I made, report, 50 minutes long, and I go through Pfizer's corporate rap sheet. I talk about lawsuits. I talk about people who have had their lives destroyed due to Pfizer's misconduct and criminal practices. People who have lost their lives due to Pfizer's misconduct and criminal practices. It's really important that we understand these things because the government won't bring it to your attention. Channel 7, Channel 9, they won't delve into Pfizer's history the way that we did on the MCJ Report. So again, mcjreport.com/special reports. All right, going back here. Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla, this guy who sold his shares when Pfizer's share prices hit just about their record high, cashed out and said, oh no, it had nothing to do. I mean, who here remembers that? The day that Pfizer publicly announced 95% efficacy, and then the next day Albert Bourla sells millions of dollars worth of his shares and says, no, it's just a coincidence. I was always planning to sell my shares at this stage. Whereas we're sitting here thinking, well, if you're so confident in your product, Albert, wouldn't you prefer to hold onto your shares and reap the future rewards? And now we see, third COVID vaccine dose likely needed. Who does that benefit first and foremost? I argue it benefits the shareholders of Pfizer. Now, something with Pfizer you need to understand is the market value of this corporation is just over $200 billion US. And if Pfizer was a nation, and if we're comparing the market value of Pfizer to, say, the GDP of the common country, Pfizer would rank in the top 25% of countries in the world if Pfizer was a country, if we're comparing Pfizer's market value to the GDP of other countries in the world. I believe Pfizer and Qatar would be pretty neck and neck. That tells you how powerful this organization is. Pfizer as an organization has engaged in the most coercive, strong-arm political lobbying perhaps the world has ever seen before. This company plays an instrumental role in how legislation is drafted, how bills are introduced and rolled out to the public, mostly from the United States. But guess what? We have pharmaceutical lobbying here in Australia as well. It's just not as spoken about. We covered it a little bit on the MCJ report, and I think we should cover it quite a lot more. I mean, this company has it so good. They're not held liable if somebody sustains an injury from their vaccine. None of the governments around the world are really requiring Pfizer to conduct any checks and balances, whether or not this jab works or whether or not it's safe. No one knows what the long-term effects are really going to be with mRNA technology being used for the first time. And now we've got the CEO saying, hey, you'll probably need three injections in the first 12 months. And then an extra injection every 12 months. Look, he says here, people will likely need a booster dose of COVID-19 vaccine within 12 months of getting fully vaccinated. His comments were made public, but were taped on April 1st. He said it's possible people need to get vaccinated annually. Well, we know that's the plan, right? You roll out the COVID passports. We know that coronaviruses, like other viruses, they tend to mutate and they tend to change. Meaning, well, you'd need a different jab every single time. But not to worry. Not to worry, because you can download your COVID passport. Maybe it will be a microchip implant that can store that data. That's within the realm of possibility. Yeah, that's not a crazy thing to say anymore. That is a measured thing to say when we see the development of microchip implants for supposedly detecting COVID. You get all the drugs injected into your arm. You get your COVID passport updated, and then you can live a free life. That's right. If you want freedom, that's what you need to do. Well, we rejected COVID normal, and we reject sticking drugs in our body that we don't want and that we don't need. We never asked for them. We don't need them. We have the sunlight. We have vitamin D. We have exercise. We have many ways to take care of our immune system. We don't need greedy people like Albert Bourla, Pfizer, and the Pfizer shareholders dictating the drugs that we that we put into our body, courtesy of a spineless Therapeutic Goods Administration, Health Department, and Australian government. That's what I say. Anyway, I think that concludes our section. Yeah, it does. That concludes our section for You Can Say No. And I'm going to get onto other parts of the broadcast. Just going to make sure we're connected. Creaker says you got your immune system. Look after it. It's the only one you have. There's Marilyn, Lisa, Tamara, Andrea. Andrea says, how does Hunt get a health portfolio? Your guess is as good as mine. No idea. All I know about Greg Hunt is that he has to go. That's really the only thing I know about the guy. You know, I've seen him schmoozing Andrew Forrest, literally sucking up to the Victorian Tasmanian Consul General from the Chinese Communist Party. It was so grotesque seeing Greg Hunt kiss that man's backside, a CCP operator. Who here knows what I'm talking about in the press conference when Greg Hunt and Andrew Forrest announced they'd be bringing 10 million PCR tests to Australia from China, and the Chinese Consul General was there, and Greg Hunt was thanking him. Thank you, Mr. Consul General, for your kind words. It was honestly the most disgusting thing I'd ever seen. I thought, Greg Hunt, be a man. He even got criticised by people in the Liberal Party for the way that he interacted with that particular actor from the Chinese Communist Party. It was truly sickening. It was truly a a despicable act that Greg Hunt engaged in that day at the press conference, and how he interacted with Andrew Forrest, and his refusal to explain to the general public that these PCR tests would only be provisionally approved, and it was disgraceful that he never bothered to explain to the public the shortcomings of these PCR tests and the flaws and the issues we may face for determining infection using these tests, regardless of what particular infection we're looking for. He never said any of that. He said, I'm Greg Hunt, and you take my word for everything I say because I'm the health minister. So don't question me. Mr. Health Minister that has no background in health. Greg Hunt is coming undone. I'm telling you that right now. He's using your tax money, my tax money, to print thousands of flyers that he's putting into letterboxes around his electorate. One of my supporters brought it to my attention. Greg Hunt is distributing printed vaccine propaganda and infecting the mailboxes of thousands of people with these letters. So we're going to do a campaign to counter the disinformation campaign launched by Greg Hunt. We have people on our side. We have volunteers. If you'd like to be a part of it, go to reignitedemocracyaustralia.com.au and register your details. We're up against an absolute monster. Greg Hunt, he's got our tax dollars at his disposal. He can say and do whatever he wants, and nothing bad can happen to him. He can tell us, he can make therapeutic claims about the vaccine, and the TGA will never investigate him. You know that? Do you have any idea what the Therapeutic Goods Administration does to corporations that make unfounded, unapproved therapeutic claims about unapproved drugs? They get taken to the cleaners. It is highly, highly illegal. It is highly illegal. If a corporation, a private entity, makes a therapeutic claim about a drug that has not been completely approved by the TGA goes after them and collaborates with the police. It could be Victoria Police, it could be the Federal Police. They put together an investigation, they sue that person, and the entity responsible for making those claims could be facing civil and or criminal charges. Sometimes the civil penalties go up to millions of dollars, or criminal charges could result in jail time. But if you're the health minister, you're Greg Hunt, you can say whatever you want, and the TGA just happens to be looking the other way. Every time Greg Hunt makes what I would consider to be a therapeutic claim about these alleged COVID vaccines, the guys from the TGA, they've got their headphones on, they're listening to music, they're going for a run, they're at the cinema, okay, they've gone go-karting, they're playing golf. They never seem to be listening when he makes these claims. Well, you know what? We're listening. We're listening to everything this man is saying, and none of it will be forgotten. Okay? He may be getting away with it for now, but he will not get away with it forever. That's why we're doing what we're doing. Anyway, Greg Hunt really gets under my skin. Have you noticed? Have you noticed or have you not noticed? This guy particularly gets under my skin. Anyway, let's keep rolling. We still have some articles and things to talk about, and we'll do a bit of Q&A at the end. How about that? Twitter permanently blacklists James O'Keefe after CNN exposure. We're going to talk about something a little bit different, guys. United States of America. Who here knows James O'Keefe? He runs a media company called Project Veritas, which specializes in undercover reporting. So he sends in his undercover people. They've got hidden cameras. They've exposed voter fraud in the United States. They've exposed severe, extreme misconduct by Planned Parenthood in regards to some of their disgraceful practices regarding abortion. And he's also exposed people from the social media companies for people involved in the development of algorithms which are designed to enact bias against certain people from a certain political persuasion. And now he's exposed a CNN director for language pertaining to CNN's role in allegedly contributing to a Joe Biden victory and a Donald Trump defeat. Who here saw this? It's pretty interesting. Now, Twitter has blacklisted James O'Keefe for the CNN exposure. Now, the question is, which laws have been broken? It's been legal up until this point. It's legal for news companies in the United States that get their hands on this type of content to publish it. Could it be that he's just pissed off the media establishment a little bit too much this time? It says here, James O'Keefe, the founder of the investigative journalism organisation Project Veritas, has been permanently blacklisted by Twitter, just as his organisation releases bombshell undercover footage showing senior CNN employees admitting to using propaganda. The organisation's official account has also been suspended. I'm going to play you a little clip here. This is pretty crazy.
You guys saying news propaganda?
Oh no.
Okay, can you define propaganda? Like, I think I know, but like, how is it? What's the mechanism?
If the agenda, say, is to get Matt Gaetz right now, he's Republican, he's a problem for the Democratic Party because he's so conservative, right? And he can cause a lot of hiccups in passing of laws. So it would be great for the Democratic Party to get him out. So we're going to keep running those stories to keep hurting him and make it so that it can't be buried and just settled outside of court and just if we keep pushing that, it's helping us. That's propaganda. It's helping us in some way.
Yeah, so the CNN technical director there basically admitting CNN's role in this particular arena, not as an unbiased news reporter, which a lot of people already knew, but rather a propaganda machine aimed at propping up people from one side of politics whilst tearing down people from the other side, whilst masquerading as a media organisation. I dare say we see a lot of the same in Australia. All right, moving on here to the Epoch Times. Health of children receiving virtual learning may be worsening. This is the largely unseen detrimental effect of lockdowns and how they're affecting children. I'm going to read to you a little bit here. Once again, if you want to read the full article, mcjreport.com. Go there, put your email address. I'll send everything to you. It says here, children learning remotely or in a hybrid setting are more likely to experience worse emotional and mental health, as well as less movement, time spent with friends, and being outside than children who go to school, according to a recent study by the CDC. It says virtual instruction might present more risks than does in-person instruction related to child and parental mental and emotional health and some health supporting behaviours, the researchers said, adding that children might need additional support to mitigate pandemic effects. Prior to the pandemic, more than 8 million children between the ages of 3 and 17 suffered a behavioural or mental health condition, according to the National Survey of Children's Health. Anxiety, behaviour disorder and depression were the most common conditions. So it really makes you wonder, what is the true effect of lockdowns on children? What will the mental health after effect be, and how many years will this tremendous assault plague our society for? It's interesting that the government never bothers to speak to us about the detrimental effects of these lockdowns, because of course it goes against the narrative of their own opinion regarding public safety. Is it really their opinion, or are they just taking orders from above? I don't know. You put that in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. So here we go. Pentagon scientists develop microchip that detects COVID before symptoms when placed under skin. You know, it's not even weird to talk about this anymore. Who here remembers a time when speaking about the prospect of microchip implants was considered taboo, and anybody that even uttered the word microchip would be laughed at, cast into a corner somewhere? Well, it's a perfectly normal topic now. Check it out. Pentagon scientists develop microchip. I'm going to read to you a little bit here. It says here, Pentagon researchers developed a microchip that can be inserted under the skin to detect COVID-19 infection before a person begins showing symptoms. It's a sensor, said Dr. Matt Hepburn, as an infectious disease physician and retired Army colonel. That tiny green thing in there, you put it underneath your skin, and what that tells you is that there are chemical reactions going on inside the body, and that signal means you're going to have symptoms tomorrow. The technology was developed by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, a top-secret unit launched during the Cold War era that studies emerging technologies and how they can be applied for use in the military. All right, so a microchip implant to detect whether or not you're about to get COVID. What's next? A microchip implant that tells a sensor computer what drugs you've been injected with. We need to be talking about vitamin D. We need to be talking about living a healthy life. Coronaviruses have been around for a really long time. Let me ask you a question there at home. What is the average life expectancy and what is the average age of death that is attributed to COVID-19? Answering that question, in my opinion, tells you everything you truly need to know about this so-called novel coronavirus. Moving forward. Okay, so maybe you've been paying attention to this a little bit. Manufacturers, retailers, distributors all around the world are beginning to boycott companies and producers from the far western region of East Turkestan in China. Japan's top ketchup maker stops importing Xinjiang tomatoes. Okay, so the world finally getting together and recognizing the crimes against humanity and human rights abuses being carried out by the Chinese Communist Party against the Muslim minority in the far western region of East Turkestan. Crimes including but not limited to sterilization of women, forced labor, slave labor, biometric surveillance, DNA harvesting and surveillance, quite possibly human organ harvesting, brainwashing, disappearances, you name it. The Chinese Communist Party is trying to. There's no really pleasant way to say this. They're trying to have the ethnic Muslims in China erased through various methods. One of them is by outbreeding. So what the CCP does is makes a concerted effort to relocate Han Chinese people to the far west region over there in order to contribute towards diminishing the gene pool of the ethnic Turkic minority over there in that part of China. And then, of course, there's forceful measures like forcefully sterilizing women and enslavement and torture and so forth. So huge crimes against humanity. It's absolutely disgraceful that for so long the world has known about this and are standing by. Now the world's starting to respond. So kudos to Japan for ceasing tomato imports from that region. Maybe they'd like to buy Australian tomatoes. Wouldn't that be nice? And we still need a lot more. The world needs to come together and condemn China for their crimes against humanity and human rights abuses, because ultimately we're building our biggest enemy. Remember, when China builds those man-made military islands in the South China Sea, it's most definitely extremely likely that they're doing so with Australian steel. China's expansion and what they've done around the world, their militarization of the South China Sea, the Belt and Road Initiative, I'm telling you right now, it never would have been possible without Australian steel. That is nothing more than I would refer to that as nothing more than a fact. China cannot survive without our steel. They can't replace us. They can't find another supplier that can produce the quantity or the quality. We need to stop contributing to the expansion of this imperialist regime before our iron ore returns to Australia in the form of bullets, and that's exactly what will happen if we keep building China. Has to stop. It has to stop. There's many brands now that are actually banding together in order to cease purchasing cotton and other products from the far western region of East Turkestan due to these human rights abuses. H&M is getting on board with it, and there's other global brands as well. Maybe you've got your own thoughts about it. Put that in the comments below. I think we need to be more sustainable in Australia. It pains me the extent to which our politicians over the years have enacted trade deals that has outsourced our manufacturing and made us overly dependent on other countries, most notably China, a torturous expansionist regime that would very much like to invade our country one day, should they have the opportunity to do so. So if I ever happen to be working in Parliament, one of the biggest things on my agenda would be advocating for the diversification of export markets for Australian products, investing in Australian innovation, utilizing our natural resources in order to bring down production costs. That would be a huge agenda for myself if I was to ever be in that environment. Again, if you've got your own thoughts about this, put it in the comments below. If you'd like to join the fight, head over to reignitedemocracyaustralia.com.au, click on We Are Coming on the homepage, fill your details in, and you can get on the ground and you can become part of the solution. We need as many people on the ground as possible, getting the word out there, countering the disinformation campaign of the government, and ultimately supporting and propping up good, decent people that are willing to run for Parliament. mcjreport.com/support. If you would like to support the show, you can do that here, mcjreport.com/support. I do this full-time now. This is my full-time mission in life, and it is only made possible because of your financial contributions. I would like to thank everybody who does contribute. Those who do, we have a private MCJ members Telegram group where we put ideas, we send ideas back and forth. We have some special events, we have meetups and things like that. So if you'd like to join, you can go to mcjreport.com/support and you can become an MCJ member. In saying that, of course, if you're going through a difficult time, please hold off and you can come back to this another time, no problem. Something else that is really important is Rumble, rumble.com/user/Morgan C. Jonas. This is my preferred video uploading site. I don't know how long I'll be on YouTube for. YouTube suspended me. I'm always getting suspended from YouTube and I don't even know what I'm doing wrong. So there you go. So that just about wraps it up for the show. I'm going to go back to this screen. I can see there's 142 of you tuned in right now, and we can do a little bit of Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, how about you ask me, and I will do my best to answer the questions that you have. Andrea says, when you get a job, you'll have Andrea, no problem. Please look after yourself. You know, the content will be free. I'm here. I'm fighting for you. And the last thing I would want is for anyone to be put in a difficult position because of supporting this show. Okay, so we're going to get here with the momentum's real. I'm not going anywhere. Monica's not going anywhere. Viv says, see me tomorrow. Awesome. You're going to come to the station? It's pretty funny, right? We have to use guerrilla tactics now. I'll be at Seymour train station, 1:45 to 2:15 p.m. I'll be on either platform 2 or platform 3, but I'll be standing out there, so hopefully you won't miss me. Harp says, when are we going shooting? You tell me. Hey, I'm keen anytime. Anytime. Send me a message and we'll make it happen. How about that? Just going to read some comments here. If anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and put it. Terry says, any underlying problems with the 48-year-old? I don't know. It said that she had diabetes, right? But a lot of people have diabetes. I'm just having a quick read through the article once again. It says there's no link, whether it was the vaccine was... there was no established link between the vaccine and the death. You know, we hear that all the time. Underlying conditions, I can't see. I can't see any based on the wording of the article. Okay, let's see. Daz says, what about Serene? I spoke about Serene at the start of the episode. It looks like the legal watchdog has suspended her license, which comes at a time where she just submitted the class action to represent the people who were locked down arbitrarily in the Flemington buildings. We're going to do everything we can to support Serene. We need to support those who support the people. Is that fair enough? You know, that's part of the reason why I respect organizations like the Canadian Frontline Nurses so much. You've got great people who have dedicated their lives to doing the right thing, helping people. This corona situation comes along and they're still being brave and standing up. So many people from the legal and medical profession have just bowed down to the government. Instead of doing their own research, many of them have towed the government line and probably against their better judgment as well. So those who don't, we must support them. Legalize vaping. I believe vaping should be legalized. Who here thinks the same? What is a good reason for vaping not being legal? It helps people get off smoking. The argument some people make is, well, kids get into vaping and then they get into cigarettes. Is there any real proof that that's what happens? Or is it something made up to protect the profits of big tobacco? You tell me. Could I join? Well, I'm willing to talk to anybody that is wanting to do something to support Serene. I know Serene, she's a nice person. I enjoy talking with her and I'm definitely here to support and to do what I can. Serene is from Advocate Me. Lewis says everyone that has a big platform needs to get together. Lewis, it sounds really good in theory, but you'd be surprised. It does not work that way. It doesn't work that way. There are certain people that certain people can work with, but people have different personalities. Some people have a very specific idea of what they want to do, and it doesn't always work to get everyone together in one room, and that's what I've realized. Decentralization is the key. It comes in the form of people being able to run their own project whilst collaborating and working alongside with other people. But a lot of the time when people come together to form a coalition, it just it doesn't work because so many people want to pull off different ways. Sometimes you have egos involved and it's not always something that just happens. Michelle says it's all about profits. You're talking about big tobacco or big pharma? Just reading the comments here. Government is losing money from vaping. Yeah. I mean, how much tax is charged on cigarettes? Can anyone tell me? Daz says, talk to Craig Cole. I'll give him a call. Donna, you quit smoking and started vaping. How's that going for you? Do you feel like it's good enough? You're getting your nicotine hit and it's keeping you going? All right. So that looks like just about it. If anyone has any other questions, I'll give it a minute for you to pop it in the comments because there is a little bit of a delay. But if not, then I suppose we'll be back off to, I don't know, where we're going to be. We're going to be off to Seymour tomorrow and hopefully I'll see you there. All right, so that looks like it's probably about the end of the show right now. I'd like to thank everyone that's tuned in. And hopefully I'll see you tomorrow, but we'll do live streams and hang in there. Be strong. All right, we are going to win this fight. They're trying to stop us. We saw what happened to Serene, and there's all sorts of attacks in store for all sorts of people that are challenging the government agenda. Okay, so we need to be very strong, and we need to do it together. Lots of love. I'll speak to you soon.